Mold is a living fungus which thrives in environments that are damp and warm. Molds eat organic matter such as leather or paper and can be found anywhere where moisture and oxygen are found, so of course they're going to be a big problem to libraries and archives. There are over 100,000 different types of mold, and many of them are not only harmful to the materials but to humans as well. Mold can be spread by microscopic spores that move through the air and attach to other organic materials where they feed. But be careful, because not everything that looks like mold is mold. Take this book for example. That might look like mold, but it's actually something called foxing. Typically, mold will start around the edges, not in the middle of the page. So how do we fight mold? Well, the first step is actually to avoid it. Mold will thrive in temperatures around 75 degrees and 70% humidity, so we need to make sure we are keeping our archives and libraries temperatures around 68 degrees and humidity between 50 and 55%. We also need to be more proactive in removing dust, dirt, and other particles from around the stacks and archives. Make sure to regularly vacuum and sweep around the materials to keep the area nice and clean. Since mold loves moisture, make sure to keep water and other liquids away from the books. We also need to keep the books themselves clean. If you happen upon a book that is dirty like this one, try your best to clean it. You can use a brush or even a dry cleaning sponge to help. But mold is persistent and tricky. Sometimes the only warning sign is the smell. So what happens if we find mold? The first thing you should do is stop and try to find some professionals to help. Explain to them what mold looks like and how big the problem is. Remember that not all mold is harmless. You can expedite this process by having done some prior research and finding a professional who can help for a disaster plan. If the problem seems like something that you and your team can tackle, everyone involved should wear gloves and masks. It is even better if you can clean up outside. But if that's not possible, try to find a large open space with great ventilation. Even though the bottle says that it kills mold and mildew, please, please, please do not use Lysol. Someone used Lysol in a leather diary we have in our collection, and I watched in horror as the leather split and the pages curled. Easy cures for mold are not the answer. Instead, we should start treatment by first finding the scope of the situation, then isolating the moldy materials from the unharmed materials. During this time, you should also be looking at the environment and finding out why this mold grew. This could be anything from a leaky roof to high temperatures in the storage room. Once you know that, your priority should be fixing the environmental problem first. If the mold is green and fuzzy, your team should probably leave it to the professionals. This means the mold is currently active and alive. If the mold is dormant, it will appear dry and powdery. The mold should be dormant if your team plans on tackling it by themselves. If the items happen to be wet, they should be freeze-dried as quickly as possible. Mold grows quickly and will start to affect the materials within 48 hours of getting wet. The object should be wrapped in wax paper and taped shut. It's also good to note on it what the name of the object is and the date. Here's a diagram on how to pack the books in the freezer. Try not to put it in a freezer with food though. Once the object is frozen, you can carefully remove it and attempt to wipe off any water crystals. You may do this several times. Freezing is great because it'll cause the mold to go dormant, and you can also dry the materials at the same time. Another way to deal with mold on paper is to simply clean it. If doing this step indoors, make sure the space is closed off from other materials. Your team will need a HEPA filter vacuum for this, and if the material is fragile, a screen to protect the material will be helpful. Use a Bristol brush or cover the nozzle with cheesecloth to further protect the materials, and move the nozzle up and down. Make sure you are using a light touch to avoid embedding the spores into the material. Some libraries and archives are also finding that using chlorine dioxide is a great way to clean as well. Chlorine dioxide is safe for both materials and workers. It can be applied to book covers and exterior pages of books using cheesecloth pads. The materials can then be set aside in front of a low-powered fan to dry. Your team can also use chlorine dioxide packets or foggers to use for the whole room. The next step would be to clean the housing and the materials were stored in. Now is the time to use Lysol and other sprays to clean metal surfaces such as shelving, but make sure to move any paper or leather materials away. Once the shelves are nice and dry, check to make sure you don't smell the old book smell anymore. If not, the mold should be cleaned up. Then you can replace books and materials back to their proper storage. Once everything is back to its proper storage space, continue to keep checking for any new mold growth. Make sure the temperature and humidity stay in their sweet spots, and try to be diligent checking for any building leaks. Hopefully, if we find any mold in our institutions, it'll be a small and easy job to deal with. One library wasn't so lucky, however. In 1998, the Ellis Library at Arkansas State University found an extreme mold outbreak in one of their stacks. Not only did the library have to close down, they had an estimated 100,000 books to clean. That's about 16 miles worth of moldy books. Their teams worked overnight to clean the materials and the room. In the end, the cleanup cost the library an estimated $100,000. We should all try our best to be diligent about mold and know the steps to take so a mold outbreak doesn't become a mold disaster in our libraries and archives. I just want to make a disclaimer. We are currently getting a complete remodel of our building, and we just had to move everything out of the archives and out of our offices, so we're normally not this messy. I apologize for the way the room looks and everything. We're still cleaning up and getting everything back to normal. Shout out to my mom who spent an entire afternoon filming with me. Thank you.